The skis of Veridia burned crimson as Sergeant Elias Frost dragged himself across the barren battlefield. Blood soaked through his tactical mesh at the abdomen, where shrapnel from an alien explosive had nearly torn him in half. The retreat sirens had blared 15 minutes ago. His squad had searched for him for all of 3 minutes before Captain Morris gave the order to evacuate. "No man left behind," Elias laughed bitterly, the taste of copper filling his mouth as he collapsed behind the wreckage of a combat rover. The ground trembled with distant explosions as the human forces pulled back to their fortified zone 20 clicks north. They would regroup, lick their wounds, and return with bigger weapons to claim another worthless chunk of this godforsaken planet. Standard procedure. Except he wouldn't be there to see it. The medical nanites in his system had stopped the worst of the bleeding, but they couldn't repair organ damage this severe. His battlefield medical training told him he had hours at most. The pain dampeners in his suit were already at maximum, barely keeping him conscious. The comms in his helmet crackled with static. They'd already moved out of range. Or perhaps they'd simply shut down his channel, writing him off as a combat loss. One fewer pension to pay, one more name for the memorial wall back on New Earth. As consciousness began to fade, Elias thought he saw movement in the shadowed ridgeline half a kilometer east. A silhouette moved with fluid grace across the broken terrain, pausing occasionally as if scenting the air. Even through his pain-fogged mind, recognition sent ice through his veins. The Huntress. Every soldier on Veridia knew of her, a shade-claw female who moved like death itself through battlefields, reportedly responsible for over 30 human casualties in the past month alone. Military intelligence had compiled footage of her, a bipedal predator standing over 7 feet tall, with silver-streaked fur and amber eyes that seemed to glow in darkness. Those massive clawed hands could rip through combat armor like paper. She was moving directly toward him now, her powerful form gliding between the wreckage as the dying light caught the silver streaks in her dark pelt. In his delirium, Elias found her strangely beautiful, a perfect apex predator, evolved for this harsh world. His sidearm lay within reach, but what was the point? Even at full strength, a standard-issue plasma pistol would only annoy something like her. Better to die with dignity than to die struggling. "Come on then," he whispered. "Make it quick." The Shadeclaw approached cautiously, those luminous eyes fixed on him with predatory intensity. Up close, she was even more imposing, a wall of muscle and sinew beneath that sleek fur. But as she crouched beside him, Elias noticed something unexpected. She wore a harness of woven material across her torso, carrying various pouches and containers, not the primitive savage the military briefings had described. Her muzzle twitched, scenting his wounds. One massive clawed hand reached toward him, and Elias closed his eyes, awaiting the killing blow. Instead, he felt himself being lifted with surprising gentleness. His eyes snapped open to find himself cradled against her chest, his weight apparently insignificant to her powerful frame. "What are you doing?" he gasped. The Shadeclaw made a series of low, rumbling vocalizations, then reached to a device at her harness. A mechanical voice emerged, translating her speech into stilted Terran standard. "You die here or you come, choose quick." Elias stared up at the fearsome face that had haunted soldiers' nightmares, now backlit by the dying sun of Veridia. "Why would you help me?" he managed. The alien tilted her head, those amber eyes studying him with intelligence that no military briefing had ever acknowledged. "Wounded," came the translated response. "I heal, this my purpose." As she carried him away from the battlefield, Elias surrendered to unconsciousness. His last thought a surreal wonder at how the most feared creature on this planet might become his only hope for survival. Consciousness returned to Elias in fragments. First came sensation, the absence of pain where agony had ruled before, then a strange softness beneath him unlike the rigid military cots. The air carried unfamiliar scents, sweet botanical aromas mingled with earthy musk. When he finally opened his eyes, it took long moments to process his surroundings. He lay in what appeared to be a cave dwelling, skillfully adapted into living quarters. Bioluminescent fungi cast a gentle blue glow across stone walls adorned with intricate woven tapestries. The smooth floor was covered with layered pelts and woven mats. In a far corner, a small stream trickled through a channel carved into the rock, providing fresh water. "Advanced primitive," he murmured, military anthropology terms surfacing from his training. The space showed sophisticated engineering, but relied on natural materials rather than technology. Movement drew his attention. The Shadeclaw, the huntress, entered through a concealed doorway, ducking her powerful frame beneath a hanging of dried plants. Seeing him awake, she approached with measured steps, those amber eyes watching him with unmistakable intelligence. Instinctively, Elias reached for a weapon that wasn't there. His combat suit had been removed, leaving him in his undergarments. His abdomen, previously torn open by shrapnel, was now covered with a translucent gelatinous substance that pulsed with bioluminescence. The Shadeclaw gestured to his wound, then reached for her translation device. "Healing good, 2 days more," came the mechanical voice. 2 days? Elias touched the gel-covered wound with disbelief. "That's impossible. This should have killed me." "Xanthai's extract," she replied, pointing to the gel. "From deep forest regrows tissue." She approached, kneeling beside him to examine the wound with clinical precision. This close, Elias noticed details he'd missed before. Her claws, though formidable, were precisely trimmed. The silver streaks in her fur formed symmetrical patterns that seemed almost ornamental. Around her neck hung multiple pouches containing what appeared to be botanical samples. "You're a healer," he realized aloud. She touched her chest. "Kira." Then she pointed to him with a questioning tilt of her head. "Elias, Sergeant Elias Frost." He paused, military suspicion warring with his circumstances. "Why help me? Our people are at war." Kira's ears flattened slightly as she arranged various containers near his bedside. The translation device conveyed her response with emotionless precision, though her body language suggested frustration. "Not my war, I heal all beings," she gestured expansively. "Shadeclaw attacked by humans first, I lose family, still I heal." She offered him a carved wooden cup containing a steaming liquid. When he hesitated, she made a drinking motion. "For strength, no poison." To demonstrate, she took a small sip herself before offering it again. The gesture was unmistakable, a universal sign of trustworthiness across worlds. Elias accepted the cup, sipping cautiously. The liquid tasted bitter yet somehow invigorating, warmth spreading through his limbs almost immediately. "Military intelligence says your kind are savage predators, that you hunt humans for sport," he said, watching her reaction. Kira's expression changed, her features shifting in ways his human perceptions struggled to interpret, though the emotion seemed like sad amusement. She activated her translator again. "And what humans say of humans, truth always," she gestured to his healing wound. "Predator teeth can kill, predator hands can heal, choice defines, not form." She rose gracefully, moving to a workbench across the chamber where various plants hung drying. With precise movements, she began crushing leaves in a stone mortar. "Rest now, later you stand, show you truth." As she worked, Elias studied her furtively. Military briefings had depicted Shadeclaws as barely sentient killing machines, yet here was one with medical knowledge beyond human capabilities, living in a sophisticated dwelling, communicating complex ideas despite language barriers. How much else had been propaganda? He recalled the rumors among troops, stories of mutilated bodies, of Shadeclaw warriors toying with human victims before killing them. Had those been fabrications? Or were there indeed warriors among her kind as there were among humans, with Kira representing something different? As these thoughts tumbled through his mind, Elias noticed something on a nearby shelf, a collection of small objects arranged with apparent care. Human objects, a military identification tag, a wristwatch, a pocket knife with the Earth Forces emblem. A chill ran through him. Perhaps he wasn't the first soldier she had helped. Kira turned, catching his gaze on the collection. She approached, selecting the identification tag and bringing it to him. "Others before you," she confirmed through the translator. 3, 2 wounded could not save." She touched her chest in what seemed a gesture of regret. "Honored their passing, keep memory tokens, Shadeclaw Way." The tag belonged to Private Linnea Caraway, 33rd Division. Elias remembered the name from missing personnel reports months earlier. "You didn't kill them?" he asked directly. Kira's ears flattened completely, her muzzle tightening in what appeared to be offense or indignation. "I heal," she repeated firmly. "Death comes sometimes, I honor, never cause." Perhaps it was the medicine or his vulnerable position, but Elias found himself believing her. As she returned to her work, he sank back into the surprisingly comfortable bedding, watching this creature that defied everything he'd been taught about her kind. Either she was unlike other Shadeclaws, or everything he knew about this war was built on lies. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. The following days unfolded in a rhythm unlike anything Elias had experienced in his military career. Mornings began with Kira changing his wound dressing, applying fresh xanthized gel with methodical care. Her massive hands, capable of rending metal, worked with surgeon-like precision as she monitored his healing. The translator device remained their bridge, though increasingly Elias found himself understanding her body language. The way her ears tilted forward when curious, flattened when concerned, or how her eyes narrowed slightly when concentrating. "Stand today," she announced on the third morning. "Must move or muscles weaken." Elias grimaced as she helped him upright. The wound had closed remarkably, leaving fresh pink scar tissue where fatal damage had been. His legs trembled beneath him, but Kira's steady grip kept him balanced. "I've never seen healing like this," he admitted, examining the nearly restored tissue. "Military medicine would take weeks to achieve this." Kira made a sound, a rolling purr that he now recognized as her version of laughter. "Humans no machines, Shadeclaw no living things," she explained, guiding him in slow steps around the chamber. "Balance, yes, each knowledge valuable." She led him toward the cave entrance, paused to drape a woven cloak around his shoulders, then guided him outside. Sunlight momentarily blinded him, the first he'd seen in days. As his vision adjusted, Elias found himself speechless. The cave entrance opened onto a hidden valley nestled between jagged mountains. Unlike the war-ravaged terrain where he'd fallen, this sanctuary burst with life. Terraced gardens cascaded down gentle slopes, filled with plants bearing colorful fruits and flowers. A small waterfall fed the stream that ran through Kira's dwelling. Above, massive arching stone formations provided natural camouflage from aerial surveillance. "Your home," he managed finally. "It's beautiful." Kira's posture straightened with unmistakable pride. "Family place, many generations," her expression shifted subtly. "Before war." She guided him to a flat stone warmed by sunlight, helping him sit. From this vantage point, Elias could see intricate irrigation channels directing water to each garden bed, evidence of sophisticated agricultural engineering. "Where is your family now?" he asked. Kira's amber eyes fixed on the distant mountains. "Gone, human weapons dropped from sky, 3 seasons passed." She touched a silver amulet hanging from her harness. "I alone survived, was collecting healing plants in high caves." Elias felt a heaviness in his chest that had nothing to do with his physical wound. "I'm sorry." She regarded him with an unreadable expression. "You dropped bombs." "No," he answered honestly. "I'm infantry, ground forces, but I'm part of the same military." Kira settled beside him, her powerful frame casting a shadow over the stone. "Why humans come to Veridia, what you seek?" It was a question Elias had asked himself countless times during sleepless nights in barracks. The official explanation involved securing strategic resources and preventing security threats, but after 3 years of bloody conflict, those justifications rang hollow. "Officially, mineral rights, xanthium deposits," he gestured to his healing wound. "The same substance you use for medicine our corporations want for energy production and weapons." A low rumble emerged from Kira's chest, not aggression, but something like weary recognition. "Always same story, different worlds, same pattern," she turned to face him directly. "You believe this, right?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Elias found himself unable to meet her gaze. "I enlisted to protect my home colony," he said finally. "Believed what they told us, that your kind were violent, dangerous, a threat to human expansion." He gestured to his healing wound. "Everything I've seen contradicts that." As afternoon faded to evening, they remained outside, Kira pointing out various plants and explaining their properties. Her knowledge was encyclopedic, passed through generations. Occasionally, her fur would brush against his skin, initially startling but gradually becoming familiar, almost comforting. That night, as temperature dropped rapidly as it did on Veridia, Kira built a small fire inside the cave. The dancing light cast their shadows against the wall, hers massive and furred, his smaller and alien by comparison. Yet something about the sight struck Elias as strangely harmonious. "Cold tonight," Kira observed, adding fragrant herbs to the fire. "Need warmth for healing." She settled beside him, her body radiating heat. Without thinking, Elias leaned slightly toward that warmth. She stiffened momentarily, then relaxed, gradually shifting closer until her fur pressed against his side. "Is this acceptable?" The translator conveyed her question. "Yes," Elias replied, surprised by how comfortable he felt. "More than acceptable." In the firelight, their eyes met, amber meeting blue across the gulf of entirely different evolutionary paths. Hesitantly, Elias raised his hand, pausing before gently touching the silver-streaked fur of her shoulder. The texture was softer than he'd imagined, thick and warm. Kira made a sound, not quite purr, not quite growl, and raised her own massive hand. With extraordinary gentleness, a padded finger traced the line of his jaw, curious exploration rather than threat. "Different," she said simply, "but same also." Something shifted between them in that moment. A boundary crossed not through words, but through touch. As the fire burned low, neither moved away. Instead, they remained side by side, two beings from warring worlds finding unexpected solace in each other's presence. Against all logic, against his training and everything he'd been told to believe, Elias realized he felt safer with this supposed enemy than he ever had among his own kind. And in that realization lay both comfort and profound disquiet about the nature of the conflict that had brought them together. A fortnight after Kira rescued Elias from the battlefield, they settled into an unexpected harmony. His wound had healed remarkably, leaving only a silvery scar where death had nearly claimed him. Each day brought new discoveries as Kira introduced him to her world, teaching him to identify medicinal plants, showing him ancient shadeclaw texts preserved on treated hide scrolls, revealing a civilization far more sophisticated than human intelligence reports had ever acknowledged. In the evenings, Elias shared stories of Earth and its colonies, describing oceans and forests to someone who had never left Veridia. Kira listened with rapt attention, asking incisive questions that often left him reconsidering aspects of his own culture he'd taken for granted. At night, they slept closer than necessity demanded, her fur warming him against Veridia's chill, his presence easing the loneliness that had haunted her since losing her family. They didn't speak of this growing intimacy. This impossible connection between species evolution had designed to be strangers. Words seemed inadequate for something that transcended their biological differences. On this particular morning, they ventured farther from the cave than usual, Kira leading him to a high ridge overlooking a vast forested valley. In the distance, smoke rose from what Elias recognized with a pang as a human military outpost. "Your people," Kira said, pointing toward the smoke. Her tone carried no judgment, merely observation. Elias felt conflicted emotions surge through him. Part of him longed for the familiarity of human company, for the simple comfort of being among his own kind. Yet another part recoiled at returning to an organization whose entire narrative about the Shadeclaw had proven false. "They probably think I'm dead," he said finally. Kira studied him, those amber eyes seeming to pierce through his thoughts. "You wish return." The question hung between them, weighted with unspoken implications. Before he could answer, a sound cut through the air, the distinctive whine of a military hover scout approaching. They ducked instinctively behind an outcropping as the vehicle passed overhead, its sensors sweeping the terrain. "They're expanding patrols," Elias murmured, recognizing the search pattern. "Moving into this region." Kira's ears flattened. "We'll find Valley soon, my home." The realization struck him like physical pain. Her sanctuary, this hidden paradise where ancient knowledge was preserved, would become another battlefield, another casualty in humanity's relentless expansion. They returned to the cave in tense silence. Inside, Kira gathered various pouches of dried plants, organizing them with methodical efficiency. "Must move deeper mountains," she said finally, her movements betraying anxiety Elias had never seen in her before. "Not safe here now." Watching her pack the precious medicinal knowledge of generations, Elias made a decision. He retrieved his partially repaired combat suit from where Kira had stored it, locating the emergency beacon in its damaged communications array. With a deep breath, he activated it. Kira froze, nostrils flaring as she detected his action. "What you do?" "Signaling my position," he explained. If they're going to find this place anyway, better they find me first. I can talk to them, explain. Explain what? The translator couldn't capture the emotion in her voice, but her body language, the raised fur along her spine, the tension in her powerful frame, conveyed her distress. That Shadeclaw not monsters. They already decide, will not listen. They'll listen to me, Elias insisted, though doubt gnawed at him. I'm one of them. I can tell them about you, about what I've learned. They kill my family from Sky. Never saw them, never knew them. Kira gestured sharply at his beacon. This brings death. Her words struck him silent. She was right, and they both knew it. His faith in military reason was a soldier's delusion. Yet the beacon was already active. Within hours, a rescue team would arrive, armed for hostile territory, primed to eliminate threats. As evening descended, they sat on opposite sides of the cave, the air between them heavy with unresolved tension. Eventually, Kira approached, settling beside him. If you go, they not harm you? She asked finally. No, I'm one of their missing soldiers. They'll extract me. She nodded slowly. Then you should go, safer. Elias caught her massive hand in his smaller ones. Come with me. The suggestion hung impossible between them. They both recognized its futility. A Shadeclaw appearing suddenly among armed human soldiers would be shot before words could be exchanged. Dawn brought the sounds Elias had been expecting, the distant rumble of approaching military vehicles. Kira had packed essential supplies, preparing to flee deeper into the mountains once Elias departed. The farewell neither of them wanted to speak weighed the air between them. Promise, remember truth, Kira said finally, touching his healed wound with gentle claws. Remember not all stories true. Before Elias could respond, the cave's outer sensors that Kira had fashioned from native materials triggered, multiple human heat signatures approaching through the valley. You go, she urged, backing toward the rear tunnel that led deeper into the mountain network. Meet them outside, safer. Elias moved toward the entrance but paused, turning back to her. In 2 quick strides, he crossed the distance between them. Words failing, he pressed his forehead against hers in the Shadeclaw gesture of connection she had once shown him. Her breath caught, then her massive arms engulfed him briefly, fur soft against his skin. Go, she whispered. Outside, Elias identified himself as the extraction team approached. 6 heavily armed soldiers led by Lieutenant Darian Walsh, a woman he'd trained with years earlier. Frost, disbelief colored Walsh's voice as she lowered her pulse rifle. Holy shit, you're actually alive, how the hell? The reunion was cut short by another soldier's shout. Movement in the cave, I've got a Shadeclaw signature. Elias turned in horror to see Kira framed in the cave entrance, her massive silhouette unmistakable. She had followed him, perhaps concerned by the number of armed humans, perhaps unwilling to hide while he faced them alone. Target locked, called a soldier, weapon raised. No, Elias shouted, but the familiar whine of a charging pulse rifle filled the air. With desperate speed, he threw himself between the weapons and Kira, arms outstretched. Hold fire, Walsh commanded, confusion evident in her face as she stared at Elias defending a creature all of them had been conditioned to fear and destroy. Sergeant Frost, step aside. That's a hostile. Elias stood his ground, heart pounding. She saved my life. She's not what we've been told. None of them are. In the tense standoff that followed, everything hung in the balance. Not just their lives, but the possibility of understanding between worlds that had known only conflict. The air crackled with lethal tension as Elias stood before Kira, arms spread wide against the raised weapons of his fellow soldiers. Lieutenant Walsh's expression cycled through confusion, concern, and suspicion as she assessed the unprecedented situation. Frost, you're not thinking clearly, Walsh said, her voice deliberately calm as though addressing someone unstable. Stand down and let us extract you. Whatever happened here, we'll sort it out at base. You'll kill her the moment I step aside, Elias replied, not moving an inch. Behind him, he could sense Kira's presence, poised, alert, but making no threatening movements. And that would be murder, not combat. Private Torres, the youngest of the squad, kept his rifle trained steadily. Sir, it's a Shadeclaw, the same species that massacred Delta Company last month, the same monsters that. She's a healer, not a warrior. Elias cut him off, voice rising with urgency. Everything we've been told about the Shadeclaw is military propaganda. They're not mindless predators. They're intelligent, civilized beings with knowledge and technology different from ours, but no less advanced. Walsh signaled the squad to maintain position but not fire. Her shrewd eyes studied both Elias and the imposing figure behind him. "Sergeant, you were left with severe injuries," she said carefully. "Medical believes you may have suffered trauma-induced Stockholm syndrome. Step aside, that's an order." Elias shook his head. "Look at me, Walsh. No limp, no sign of malnourishment." He pulled aside his collar to reveal the healed wound. "This should have killed me. Their medicine saved me when our tech couldn't. There's so much we could learn from them if we weren't so determined to exterminate them." A tense silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of charged weapons. Then, unexpectedly, Kira stepped forward to stand beside Elias rather than behind him. The squad tensed, fingers tightening on triggers. "I speak," came the mechanical voice from her translator. "Human soldiers, listen." Walsh's eyes widened at the device. "It can communicate." "She," Elias corrected firmly. "Her name is Kira." Kira stood tall, her powerful form imposing yet deliberately non-threatening. With measured movements, she reached into one of her pouches and withdrew a small object, holding it forward for all to see. It was a military identification chip, the kind embedded in every Earth Forces soldier. "Marcel Domings," she said through the translator. "Found wounded, tried heal, failed, honored his passing." She produced another chip. "Anya Petrova also tried save." Walsh's expression shifted as recognition dawned. "Those are missing soldiers from previous operations. You tried to help them." "I heal," Kira stated simply. "All beings, this my purpose." Lieutenant Walsh's tactical training warred visibly with the evidence before her. She lowered her weapon slightly, signaling the others to ease their stance. "If what you're saying is true, why have we encountered nothing but hostility from your kind?" she asked directly. Kira's ears flattened slightly. "Humans attack first, take lands, destroy homes, we defend, you call defense hostility." The simple logic struck at the core of the military narrative about the conflict. Several soldiers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Walsh holstered her sidearm in a gesture of tentative trust. "Frost, explain exactly what happened to you, everything." For the next 20 minutes, as the morning sun climbed higher, Elias recounted his rescue, healing, and the knowledge he'd gained about Shadeclaw civilization. He described their advanced botanical medicine, their sustainable agricultural techniques, their rich cultural traditions preserved through generations. "She could have killed me a dozen times," he concluded. "Instead, she risked everything to save me, an enemy soldier. Tell me what's more human than that." The squad had gradually lowered their weapons as he spoke, Walsh's tactical mind clearly processing the implications of his account. Finally, she activated her comm unit. "Command, this is Extraction Team Alpha. We've recovered Sergeant Frost, but we have a situation requiring Colonel Hendrick's direct attention." She paused, listening to the response. "Negative, we're secure. Request immediate diplomatic protocol authorization." Elias stared at her in disbelief. Walsh gave him the barest hint of a smile. "Diplomatic protocol?" he asked. "Designed for first contact scenarios, but applicable here," she explained. "It suspends standard engagement rules and initiates formal communication channels." She turned to face Kira directly. "If what Frost says is true, this could be the beginning of ending this conflict." Kira's posture shifted subtly, her amber eyes studying Walsh with cautious hope. "Peace, possible." "Not easily," Walsh admitted. 3 years of bloodshed leaves deep wounds, but it has to start somewhere." She gestured to the valley around them. "This seems as good a place as any." The tension gradually dissolved as Walsh ordered the squad to establish a secure perimeter, not to contain Kira, but to protect the impromptu diplomatic site from potential interruption. By midday, Colonel Hendricks himself arrived with a small team that included, surprisingly, a xenobiologist and a diplomatic officer. As formal introductions began, Elias found himself momentarily apart from the proceedings. Kira approached him, her expression containing emotions his human perception still struggled to fully read. "Your people listen," she said quietly. "Did not expect." "Some will listen," he corrected. "Others won't. Change comes slowly." She gestured to the officials, now examining her medicinal samples with fascination. "Small beginnings, like seedling." Elias nodded, then asked the question weighing on him. What happens now to you, to us? Kira's massive hand found his, claws carefully retracted as her padded fingers entwined with his smaller ones. Unknown path, she answered, but walk together. The question contained possibilities neither of them could fully articulate, a connection that transcended species, biology, and all rational explanation. In the background, humans and a shadeclaw conversed through translators, the first tenuous bridge between worlds. Yet here, in this quiet moment, a more profound understanding had already taken root. Together, Elias agreed, his hand tightening around hers. In the days that followed, the Hidden Valley became the site of the first formal peace negotiations between humans and Shadeclaw. Kira, once feared as the Huntress, was recognized as an essential ambassador between species. Elias, navigating the complex space between worlds he now belonged to equally, found himself transformed from soldier to diplomat. The path forward would not be simple. Corporations still coveted Veridia's resources. Military hardliners on both sides resisted conciliation. Yet as knowledge of Shadeclaw civilization spread among human ranks, their medicine, their sustainable techniques, their complex culture, the narrative of mindless predators became increasingly difficult to maintain. 3 months after his near-death on the battlefield, Elias stood with Kira on the ridge overlooking the valley, watching as mixed teams of humans and Shadeclaw constructed a permanent diplomatic outpost. The sun set beyond the mountains, painting the sky in crimson hues that no longer reminded him of bloodshed. Your military leaders asked today if I represent all Shadeclaw, Kira said, amusement in her voice, as if one could speak for many. What did you tell them? Elias asked, smiling. That I speak for compassion, she replied, her amber eyes meeting his. Same language, all worlds. As darkness fell over Veridia, they returned to the cave that had once been her solitary refuge, and now served as their shared home, a small pocket of understanding in a universe where difference too often led to destruction. Their unlikely bond had become something neither species had terminology to fully describe, yet in its existence lay hope for a future where humanity described not a species, but a quality of the heart that knew no biological boundaries. In the soft glow of the bioluminescent fungi, two beings from different worlds embraced the truth they had discovered together, that sometimes the greatest journey of understanding begins with a single act of mercy in the shadow of war.